What if the mistakes quietly threatening your retirement aren't the dramatic ones? The bad investments, the sudden emergencies, the things you'd see coming from a mile away? What if the real ones are smaller than that, slower? The kind that feel completely reasonable in the moment, that nobody flags as a warning, that you only recognize clearly when you're already living with the consequences. That's what we're talking about today. 10 mistakes that show up again and again in the lives of retirees. Not because those people were careless or uninformed, but because nobody ever laid these out plainly and honestly. By the end of this, a few things are going to look different to you than they did when you press play. I'll take that as a good sign. Let's get into it. Mistake number 1, treating retirement as a finish line instead of a new beginning. For most of your working life, retirement lived in your imagination as a destination, the place you were heading toward, the reward waiting at the end of a long road. And then you arrive, and it turns out it isn't a destination at all. It's an open field with no map, no schedule, and no clear path forward. That disorientation is more common than people admit and more uncomfortable than the retirement brochures ever let on. A few months in, the celebration fades, the calendar empties, and what felt like freedom starts to feel, in quiet moments, like something closer to loss. Not because anything is wrong with you, but because for decades, your job gave you something that nobody really names until it's gone: structure. Identity, a reason to show up, a place where you were needed. The retirees who thrive aren't the ones who escape that feeling. They're the ones who build something to replace what work gave them, on purpose, with intention, before the quiet has a chance to harden into something heavier. They ask themselves early on, what am I moving toward? Not just away from. If you haven't sat with that question yet, it deserves more of your time than almost any financial calculation you'll do this year. Mistake number 2. The "I'll spend less later" assumption, and why it's usually wrong. Here's one that genuinely surprises people, even ones who've done careful planning. Most retirement strategies assume that your spending will gradually decrease as you age. And in some ways, it does. You may travel less, drive less, go out less. The active years naturally give way to quieter ones. That part is true. But what the spreadsheets often miss is what happens next. Because for many retirees, spending doesn't slope gently downward. It curves. It dips through the middle years, then climbs sharply again in the late 70s and early 80s, driven by healthcare, home modifications, in-home help, and care costs that arrive precisely when your savings have had the least time left to recover. Financial counselors sometimes call this the smile curve of retirement spending. Most people have never heard of it, but understanding it changes how you think about the whole picture. When to be generous with yourself, when to be careful, and why the goal was never to spend as little as possible. The goal is to spend in a way that holds up across the entire arc of retirement, not just the early, energetic years when everything still feels wide open. Mistake number 3, underestimating how long this chapter will last. If you're a healthy 65-year-old today, there's a very real chance you'll live another 25 or even 30 years. That's not optimism. That's the reality of modern longevity, and it changes the math on nearly every decision retirement involves. A saving strategy designed for a decade can quietly collapse in year 18. A social life that felt full and rich at 68 can feel surprisingly thin at 78 if you haven't tended it. Health habits that felt optional at 65 become non-negotiable at 75 when the window to build them is narrower and the stakes are higher. The longer frame isn't meant to make retirement feel heavy or anxious. It's meant to make your decisions feel proportionate to the life that's actually ahead of you, because that life, all of it, deserves to be planned for. Mistake number 4. Making the Social Security decision in a hurry. Social Security is one of the most consequential financial decisions most retirees will ever make, and it's permanent. Whatever age you choose to claim, you live with that choice for the rest of your life. There are no do-overs, no adjustments, no way to go back and choose differently once the years have passed. And yet, most people make this decision quickly, sometimes out of financial pressure, sometimes out of a vague anxiety that the program might change, sometimes simply because someone told them to claim early and they didn't know enough at the time to push back, claiming at 62 locks in a permanently reduced monthly benefit. Waiting past your full retirement age increases that benefit meaningfully every single year you wait, up to age 70. For someone who lives into their mid-80s or beyond, that difference doesn't just add up. It can easily reach 6 figures in total lifetime income. What's also worth knowing is that this decision doesn't exist in isolation. It interacts with your taxes, your spouse's future survivor benefits, your Medicare premiums. It deserves careful research, a clear-eyed look at your health and your other income sources, and ideally a conversation with someone who specializes in retirement income, not a rushed answer made at the kitchen table under pressure. Mistake number 5, withdrawing from retirement accounts without a strategy. Once you stop working, the financial question shifts entirely. It's no longer about how to grow your money. It's about how to spend it wisely and in what order. Most people answer that question the same way. They pull from whichever account feels most accessible or whichever one they happen to think of first. It seems harmless. It usually isn't. What most people don't realize is that the sequence in which you draw from different accounts, a traditional IRA, a Roth IRA, a regular brokerage account, has real and lasting tax consequences that ripple forward for years. Drawing from the wrong bucket at the wrong time can quietly push you into a higher tax bracket, increase your Medicare premiums, or shrink the amount you're able to leave to your family. You worked too long and too carefully for that money to let it erode through a decision that felt routine. Even one honest conversation with a qualified financial professional about withdrawal sequencing can protect a meaningful amount of what you've built. Mistake number 6, having no plan for long-term care. Once the withdrawal strategy is sorted, most people feel like the serious financial thinking is behind them. But there's one more cost sitting outside almost every retirement plan, and it's the one most likely to quietly empty an account that everything else worked hard to protect: long-term care. The probability that you will need some form of extended care, in-home help, assisted living, memory care, is higher than most people want to sit with. And the costs, when they arrive, are staggering in a way that's hard to prepare for emotionally until you've seen it up close. We're not talking about a hospital stay covered by Medicare. We're talking about ongoing monthly expenses that can run thousands of dollars, sustained over years, with little to no insurance coverage softening the blow. What makes this especially painful is that these costs don't only affect the person who needs care. They drain the savings a surviving spouse was counting on. They put adult children in impossible positions, financially, emotionally, practically. The ripple spreads much further than anyone anticipated. Long-term care insurance, hybrid life policies, or simply setting aside a dedicated portion of savings for this possibility. None of these are perfect answers, but having no plan is far more costly than any of them. This is the conversation most families avoid until it becomes a crisis. Try to have it before then. Mistake number 7, letting social connection quietly disappear. This is the mistake that never shows up in a financial spreadsheet, and it may matter more than any number in one. Loneliness among older adults is more widespread than most people admit and more damaging than most people realize. The research is sobering. Chronic social isolation affects memory, cardiovascular health, immune function, and longevity in ways that rival smoking or physical inactivity. It doesn't arrive all at once. It drifts in gradually as routines fall away and the built-in social world that work once provided simply disappears. Have you noticed this yourself? The way the days can grow quieter and how easy it becomes to let weeks pass without a real conversation. Not a surface level check-in, but a conversation that leaves you feeling seen. The antidote isn't complicated, but it does require intention. It requires showing up to a class, a group, a neighbor, a weekly phone call with someone who matters. Not waiting until you feel like it. Showing up anyway, because connection is one of the few things in retirement that genuinely compounds the more you invest in it. And it's one of the few things that becomes much harder to rebuild once you've let it go. Mistake number 8, treating physical activity as optional. When you were working, your body moved more than you ever consciously registered. The commute, the walking, the managing of a busy schedule, it all added up to something your body came to depend on. Retirement quietly removes most of that, and without something deliberate to replace it, the body begins to slow down in ways that take years to fully notice and are much harder to reverse than to prevent. This isn't about becoming an athlete in your 70s. It's about a daily walk, gentle stretching, water aerobics, tending a garden, whatever keeps your body in honest conversation with itself. The goal is simply to stay capable of the life you actually want. Independent, mobile, present for the people and experiences that matter most to you. What's easy to lose sight of is that physical capacity, once lost, is far harder to rebuild than to maintain. The best time to protect your strength and mobility isn't when you feel yourself needing it. It's right now, quietly and consistently, before the need arrives. Mistake number 9, leaving the practical paperwork undone. This one is less emotional than the others, but it carries emotional consequences that can last for years in the lives of the people you love. Does your family know where your important documents are? Do you have a current will? A healthcare directive that clearly expresses your wishes? A durable power of attorney naming someone you trust? Have you checked your beneficiary designations recently? On your retirement accounts, your life insurance, your bank accounts? That last one matters more than most people realize. Beneficiary designations override a will entirely. An account you opened 30 years ago could pass to the wrong person or create a legal tangle for your family simply because you never updated a form you forgot you filled out. Getting these things in order is not a morbid task. It is one of the clearest acts of love available to you. It is the way you take care of the people who matter most, even in moments when you can no longer take care of them yourself. And it rarely takes as long as people expect once they simply decide to begin. Mistake number 10, waiting for permission to live well. This is the quietest mistake on the list, and in some ways, it's the one that costs the most. Many retirees spend years holding back. From the trip they always meant to take, the creative project that never quite got started, the relationship that needed repair but never got the conversation it deserved, the slower, truer, more honest way of living that kept getting deferred for a better moment. One that always seemed just a little further down the road. They wait until the finances feel more settled, until the children need less, until some invisible signal arrives telling them that it's finally okay to live the way they actually want to live. That signal rarely comes on its own, and the waiting accumulates quietly until time makes the decision for them. The retirees who look back with the deepest satisfaction aren't the ones who planned perfectly. They're the ones who gave themselves permission to explore and to rest, to contribute and to ask for help, to change their minds, to say plainly what they wanted, and then move toward it with whatever time and energy they had available. You have spent a lifetime earning that permission. You don't need to wait for anyone to hand it to you. Let's bring this home. The 10 mistakes we covered today: drifting without direction, misreading how spending actually moves over time, underestimating how many years lie ahead, rushing Social Security, withdrawing without a strategy, leaving long-term care unplanned, letting connection quietly fade, treating movement as optional, leaving the important paperwork undone, and waiting for permission to finally live fully. None of these are catastrophes on their own, but left unexamined, they shape the texture of the next 20 or 30 years in ways that are very hard to undo. The good news is straightforward. Awareness is where change begins. You don't have to solve everything today. You just have to be willing to look honestly at where you are, have one conversation you've been putting off, or take one step you've been meaning to take. Before you close this video, do one thing. Write down the mistake that felt most personal to you, the one that landed somewhere specific, and share this video with one person in your life who needs to hear it. That's not a small gesture. That's exactly how these conversations start, and these are conversations worth having. If you want more of this, honest, practical, unhurried conversations about what retirement actually looks and feels like from the inside, subscribe. That's what this channel is here for. Every single week, take good care of yourself. You've earned every bit of what's ahead.